Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Sean. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. What is underlying strategic plan for Xi Jinping behind the current rampant deforestation and land cultivation campaign in China? The recent so-called nationwide campaign of returning forests to farmland has resulted in the destruction of forests in both urban and rural areas, including a large number of trees on mountains and hills. Even mature orchards are being cut down, causing immense grief to farmers. The recent flattening of greenways in Chengdu has particularly caused great distress and bewilderment, as it appears to be an absurd action. I came across a question posed by a farmer to the Sichuan provincial government online. He asked whether it is mandatory for his village in Jiang'an to participate in the current Returning Forests to Farmland campaign. He explained that his family does not have arable land and instead grows bamboo on the hillside. However, the bamboo has grown into a forest and the local village wants to forcibly cut it down. The government's response was that cutting down the bamboo is compulsory and there is no room for negotiation. If the land is designated as arable land, it must be restored as such according to land planning. Regarding the contentious deforestation and the land cultivation campaign currently taking place in China, I have 4 takeaways. To begin with, the returning farmland to forest policy was emphasized from the Jiang Zemin to the Hu Jintao era, while Xi Jinping has been emphasizing the opposite, returning forest to farmland, since last year. This is senseless. Recently, Xi Jinping has criticized the Communist Party officials for being too eager to depart from the policies of their predecessors and wanting to start anew. He believes this is just a way for them to leave their own mark on governance, as following their predecessors' policies won't showcase their achievements. However, it is ironic that when Xi Jinping criticizes officials for leaving a mark, he himself is guilty of doing the same. For instance, he prohibits officials from building large tombs as part of the fight against corruption, but his own ancestral tomb is quite large, equivalent to 1/3 of Hong Kong Island, while ordinary people cannot even have a small grave. In summary, Xi Jinping criticizes others for doing things he himself has done, including changing policies and pursuing personal fame and gain. Secondly, Xi Jinping's policy of returning forests to farmland by cutting down trees is not just a matter of changing lanes, leaving marks, or seeking personal glory. He is playing a larger game with the fundamental goal of consolidating his authoritarian rule. The logic of this game is from dictatorship to security. To achieve this broad sense of security, he has found a convenient excuse in food security. China's annual grain production is very stable at about 700 million tons, while Chinese people need about 800 million tons of grain to feed themselves, leaving a gap of 100 million tons. Importing 100 million tons of grain every year is also very easy, and many countries are competing to export grain to China. China's grain can mostly be self-sufficient, and importing some varieties can even enrich people's dietary needs, which is a good thing. However, Xi Jinping suddenly raised the topic of food security and declared that every grain of food, whether for human consumption or animal feed, must rely on China's self-production, achieving complete self-sufficiency and not relying on others. This is his so-called new food security strategy. To reach the goal of complete self-sufficiency, it is necessary to cut down trees and return farmlands to cultivation. What if regular citizens refuse to cut down trees? Xi Jinping claims that it's a safety issue. If the food supply isn't secure, then the entire country's foundation is at risk, which is worse than being choked by a chip export control. Therefore, citizens must cut down trees. However, can Xi Jinping's logic withstand scrutiny? It can't. The premise of his logic is that China is at war with the entire world, which isn't true. In a war situation, not even a single grain of food can be imported, which is why more farmland is necessary to prepare for the worst-case scenario. But how did China arrive at a point where it's blocked by the whole world? It's improbable that any country could blockade China at its current level of development. As a result, Xi Jinping has created an extreme crisis to frighten the Chinese people. Furthermore, if a crisis of that magnitude did occur, and the whole world blocked China, what would Xi Jinping hope to accomplish? Why would he make enemies with the entire world? Even if Xi Jinping's ideas are correct, how could such a scenario arise? Can he answer that question? As a result, his reasoning is self-contradictory, and the logic behind using a food crisis to scare the Chinese people into cutting down trees is unconvincing. Xi Jinping's aim is to prepare for war, which is his grand strategy. But why go to war? And even if a war broke out, would it be impossible to import even 1 grain of food? Xi Jinping is frightening the Chinese people, and he is making nonsensical decisions. The third point is that on the internet, it is often seen that farmers' homes are being demolished, orchards destroyed, and the rice paddies being constructed on hillsides. These ridiculous acts are ubiquitous. Can Xi Jinping not see them? During the Zero COVID campaign, the CCP also discovered that the local officials were making blanket decisions without distinguishing between special need groups, which was somewhat excessive. They also put a stop to such blanket decisions. During the tree cutting campaign, did the CCP prevent such a blanket decisions? No. They allowed it to continue. Does Xi Jinping lack basic discernment? Is it possible to restore good farmland by chopping down these good trees and orchards? Is Xi Jinping unaware of the destructiveness of this work? To be candid, do not underestimate Xi Jinping. He is fully aware of the absurdity of this situation and knows that such actions should not be taken. So, why doesn't he put a stop to it? And why does he even encourage these absurd actions? The logic behind this is similar to the ancient story of calling a deer a horse. The emperor knew the animal was a deer, but he insisted that it was a horse to test people's obedience and demonstrate his authority. Similarly, Xi Jinping watches the desolate scene of fruit trees being cut down, housing being demolished, and the rice paddies being built on mountains without intervention. He wants to see how resolutely his absurd decisions are executed to test whether officials are loyal to him. Xi Jinping's priorities do not include the interests of the people or the country. His authority and dictatorship come first. This is the grand strategy behind absurd retiring from forestry and returning to farm campaign. Fourthly, the weather has also caused trouble this year. After the tree cutting campaign last year, a very strong sandstorm occurred this year, the strongest in the past decade, which was a great embarrassment for Xi Jinping's retiring from forestry and returning to farming initiative. To save face for Xi Jinping, the CCP's appointed experts claimed that this sandstorm was reasonable, necessary, and even beneficial for the environment. It is ridiculous that they could come up with such logic. When they do something absurd, they often say that political accounts should be taken into consideration, not economic accounts. Cutting down trees increases wind and sand, destroys the environment, and causes soil erosion. These are economic accounts. But cutting down trees maintains the authority of the Party Central Committee and Xi Jinping, which is a political account that takes precedence. Xi Jinping designed this absurd scheme, and officials have to play along and cooperate actively because they have their own so-called political accounts, which are still intended to seek personal benefits within Xi Jinping's dictatorship. It is said that there is a food crisis, but in my opinion, this is just Xi Jinping's personal fear. The fear and anxiety of individuals in the political struggle within the CCP, which has become the main direction of his personal governance. And after he has consolidated his power, he shifts this anxiety and a sense of insecurity onto the entire population. From this perspective, the logic behind Xi Jinping's returning forest to farmland campaign is still aimed at addressing his own fears and anxieties about security. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.